we have a balanced budget and we have paid the schools back, and the major credit rating agencies have now stabilized our credit rating.
And finally, on the last week, I was tugging on the sleeve of the bonding chair, and she said, "It's all right, we're going to do it."
The government should be about all of us. And once everyone has a voice in the conversation.
Trending in Edina, Minnetonka, and Eden Prairie, Representatives Ron Erhardt and Yvonne Selcer and Minnesota House candidate Joan Howe-Pullis. Now on Democratic Visions, here's host Tim O'Brien.
2 years ago, State Representative Yvonne Selcer narrowly defeated seriously right-wing incumbent Republican Kirk Stensrud in House District 48A, Northern Eden Prairie, and Southern Minnetonka. According to a September 23 MinPost analysis, 48A leans slightly Democratic, but Yvonne is not relaxing and, to the contrary, is campaigning to beat the band. Yvonne, welcome back.
Thank you, Tim. It's great to be back.
Yvonne, I want you to recap for us again, please. What did you accomplish in the last legislative session? Why should the voters return you to the state capitol?
Well, the last 2 years have been absolutely amazing, Tim. The first thing that I did when I got over there was author the bill that paid back our schools. As you know, the previous legislature had shifted over $2 billion away from schools to pay bills.
You call it a shift, I call it a gimmick.
Well, you know what? And the major credit rating agencies also called it a gimmick. And not only, of course, was it bad for children, which is the reason why it should be paid back, but it was bad for taxpayers because the major credit rating agencies called it a gimmick and they lowered our credit rating. Which
means you have to pay more when you try and fund the borrowing for the state?
Exactly. But since now we have a balanced budget and we have paid the schools back and the major credit rating agencies have now stabilized our credit rating, I'm citing the fact that we are now doing it the right way, and I'm confident we'll climb back to that AAA rating if we keep on our current path.
And no gimmicks, no shifts in the future?
No gimmicks, no shifts in the future. And you know what, Tim? We're doing things differently. There's a new law that passed, which I supported and voted for, which makes sure that a third of every surplus going into the future has got to be put into the state savings account. We all know that the economy is cyclical. There will be another recession at some point, but this time we'll be ready with a healthy fund balance.
And for us non-political types, that's a rainy day kind of fund?
Exactly.
Tell me about the increase in the minimum wage.
That was wonderful. You know, Minnesota had one of the lowest minimum wages in the country, below the $7.25 federal guidelines for minimum wage. And we did it in a gradual way, which is good so it wouldn't be a shock to businesses, yet we did need to raise it. So over the next 2 years, the wage will gradually go up to $9.50. Students, you know, that have summer jobs, they'll still be capped at $7.75. Small businesses that bring in less than $500,000 in income every year will also be capped at $7.75. But still, we're going to be helping hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans to a better life.
College tuition. What happened there?
We froze college tuition for 2 years, and that is an excellent thing. Have been struggling with crushing debt, and that's something I'm hearing a lot as I go from door to door. So when I go back in January to the state legislature, I think we need to continue the freeze on college tuition, but we also have to look at creative ways to help students and 20-somethings get out from underneath this crippling debt.
What comes to mind?
Well, you know, loan forgiveness, if perhaps for high-demand professions that are underserved.
So work off the debt a little bit like that?
Exactly.
Nice. I may be speaking in a minority, but I think that the unpaid student debt, and I just read today that it's a drag on the housing market, but it could be worse than that. I mean, it's got to be crippling to somebody's psyche to have that kind of debt overhanging them, particularly at a time when they're coming out of school and good jobs they're not all that easy to find, particularly jobs that will enable them to repay that debt in any kind of foreseeable time frame.
It's difficult, Tim, and some of the interest rates they're paying are quite high. So another avenue, of course, too, is for them to be able to refinance. Fortunately, we are finally starting to create some high-paying jobs, so hopefully that will help mitigate the situation.
What about early childhood education? What got accomplished during this last session?
That was wonderful. Do you know the achievement gap starts very young? And children from traditionally lower income families tend to come to kindergarten behind their peers. We approved $47 million in early learning scholarships targeted to those children. Quality early learning programs really help to erase the gap before it starts. I co-authored that legislation, then I co-authored all-day kindergarten for our young families. They're very appreciative. And
That's
so,
throughout the state?
Throughout the state, and so those children will start off with a good background in preschool and build on that in kindergarten and hopefully continue their trajectory.
One other piece of legislation that I know passed in the last session, that's the Women's Economic Security Act. Tell us what that bill is intended to accomplish.
Well, it's intended to do two things. It's intended to help women entrepreneurs. The particular portion of it that I authored is a pilot to help women entrepreneurs start and expand high revenue businesses with the potential of creating high revenue jobs. And also in the Women's Economic Security Act, we have equal pay for equal work legislation.
What a novel idea.
Well, you know, that's the law, but there's not a lot of teeth behind it, so we put some teeth into that.
Good.
And also various provisions that will help women in the workplace.
Tremendous. So I don't know whether your opponent has taken this line, but I know that out my way, the mantra is that the $1.28 billion legislative surplus was quote-unquote squandered. Do you believe that you squandered that? And if not, can you tell us where that money went?
Well, a third of it,
Was it squandered?
no, a third of it went into our state's rainy day fund, as we've talked about previously. I'd like to see that be a higher percentage, but a third is a nice chunk. And then we have invested in education. We invested $750 million in our infrastructure. We froze college tuition, and that cost money. We put $100 million, Tim, towards affordable housing.
Great.
Yep, so kids that are in mobile situations, homeless, they can't learn, so we're trying to provide some stability there. So there's a number of very good programs, including preserving our environment, that we've put that money into.
What about real estate taxes? Did that part of that surplus directed into that pool for reducing real estate taxes?
Yes, property taxes have been reduced. We also passed legislation which eliminated the marriage penalty. That helps middle-class families. And we also repealed the business-to-business taxes, which I was against in the first place.
Good. I suppose you could rest on your laurels, but I know you well enough to know that you're not going to do that. Tell me what you hope to accomplish after you're elected this fall.
Do you know, Tim, the first thing we need to continue to concentrate on are jobs in the economy. I co-authored legislation which expanded the pool of forgivable loans available to small businesses, and I think we have to keep that expansion out there because it's working. It's bringing small businesses to our area, and it's helping small businesses add good paying jobs. And so we have to continue with that, and also the expansion of the angel investment credit. We have to continue to look for ways to make our climate business friendly in Minnesota. Education, we're not done there. Even though we had a marvelous investment in early childhood education, we still did not cover all the children in need. There are many children in poverty, and so we need to expand that. We need to keep investing in our K-12 system. Of course, we have accountability measures attached to that. And as I mentioned before, freezing college tuition, we have to do that again, but that's not enough.
Tell me, do you believe that the eventual expansion of the light rail out into Eden Prairie will be a boon to this vicinity?
There's no doubt about it. The business community came to me when I first said I was going to run 2 years ago.
Isn't that supported by the local Chamber of Commerce, the
It is.
light
It's
rail?
the Twin West Chamber of Commerce, the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Minneapolis Chamber of Commerce, right here in the Minnetonka, Eden Prairie area. There's estimated to be an additional 30,000 to 60,000 jobs created by businesses by 2030. And this is coming, the business community is telling us this. And so we will be able to move those people efficiently that are needed for the jobs. As I go from door to door, people are optimistic. They care. They care about what happens in our community in the state of Minnesota, and they want what's best for our community in the state of Minnesota. Sometimes the young women, the young girls will sit and listen or stand and listen
That's
while
interesting.
we're talking. And before I leave, I'll always tell them, you know, if you'd like to be a state representative someday, you can do that.
That's nice. Just wait a while until you're done with your service, right? Is that what you're
They're,
trying to say?
they're not my seat yet, right?
Ron Erhardt is also seeking re-election in a district that leans more and more Democrat. That's Senate District 49A, Northern Edina. I live there. Ron has ably served the district for the 10 terms in the state legislature. Ron, welcome for the first time to Democratic Visions.
Nice to see you.
I know every year, without fail, you're walking that 4th of July parade in Edina.
And when I get out there in the parades, I don't get much time with them, but
Yeah.
I shake their hand.
Right.
That's a lot of fun.
2 years ago, you not only got me to walk in the parade with you, you got me to walk backwards in the parade. It's only about 80 degrees, you know, and I got to wear this white Erhardt t-shirt, but no problem. I felt that was good. I was just one of many people doing that, so it was fun.
Yeah, I was.
Until July 2008, Ron was endorsed by the Republicans in Senate District 49 and its predecessors, and won election as a fiscal conservative and a social moderate, and served 8 terms in the legislature. However, in 2008, a rock-ribbed Republican was given the endorsement by the local Republicans as an aftermath to a vote to override then Governor Pawlenty and now CEO of some financial industry lobbying group.
Yeah.
Pawlenty frowned on Ron and 5 other Republicans who voted to override his veto of a bill that would have gradually increased the gas tax over a period of time to fund needed repairs to Minnesota roads and bridges. Ron is chair of the House Transportation Committee, and he's got a very solid record in transportation. But before we turn to your record in transportation, I want to set the stage here. A fellow by the name of Dario Anselmo is running against you in this year's election. It's charitable to say that his record is sparse, but he is on record answering a questionnaire from the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and it shows that he is opposed to any realistic meeting of the acute transportation needs of Edina and Minnesota. Here's his question posed by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. How should Minnesota address its unmet transportation needs in the near future? His answer: use existing revenues. Question: do you support an increase in the fuel tax for maintenance and expansion of roads and bridges? Answer by Dario: no. Now, Ron, what I'd like you to do is describe for our viewers the real problem we're facing transportation-wise and what has to be done.
Our road situation is on average 50 years old. It's come to the end of its life in a lot of respects, and we need to rebuild it, and for that it takes a lot of money. So we have to decide that we're going to have proper infrastructure for people to get their crops to market, people to get to the markets, and for commerce in general, and for everyday citizens. And we need to do that, and that's all there is to it.
Well, how are we going to fund it? That was the thrust of the questions delivered to Dario by the Chamber of Commerce.
Well, the existing ways of funding are still the most useful, and that is gas tax, the tab fees that we pay when we buy our tabs for the cars, and sales tax on vehicles when you buy them.
Are those present revenues up to the task?
They are building more efficient cars, and so for a number of years the gas tax has been level and not increasing, even though there are more cars on the road, and now it's beginning to diminish. So we are going to have to find in the longer term a different way of funding our roads. You can't wait for gas tax money to come in. You have to do big chunks of money. We can't do any more bonding because we don't have enough debt service money, and we're flat right now.
I assume what you're telling me, Ron, is that we are going to have to increase the fuel tax, maybe at the wholesale level, perhaps. Would that be a solution?
Some other states have done that, and I think that we just began to talk about that last session. We also have to look at low mileage and then electric cars. They all use the roads, so we're going to have to find some replacement methods to charge the ones that are getting away with driving on the roads with just a shot of electricity in their car.
Well, sounds like a daunting task. Now, I don't want to get into this in any great detail, but are you the guy that put together the package that allowed us to add that existing lane out on 494 that's going to be able to make it a 3-laner all the way out through Plymouth?
Actually, I did. Maple Grove and Plymouth were very anxious for the last 15 years to get a 3rd lane in there. It's one of the few.
Well, of course, anybody from Edina or Eden Prairie that's driving out that way needs
Absolutely.
that 3rd lane also.
And that's how I became accustomed to getting stuck in traffic out there. So I thought, well, let's call in the people. I called in the mayors of both those towns and said, do you really want this? Or should we let the highway department go ahead and build a lane that will be 80% efficient and only used for buses? And they all said no, and so I passed the bill unanimously.
Major kudos to you. That's a heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to touch on another point that was brought up in this Minnesota Chamber of Commerce questionnaire that was answered by Dario Anselmo. And the question was this: if elected, what will be your top priority? This is his answer. During the 2014 legislative session, a $1 million projected surplus presented an opportunity to reduce taxes on businesses and boost the Minnesota economy. For the most part, this opportunity was squandered. Do you believe that you, as a part of the 2014 legislature, squandered the budget surplus?
Well, not really. We did $550 million worth of, or almost half of that, in relieving business-to-business tax. They were my bills, as a matter of fact, to take out the business-to-business tax. And a business-to-business tax is where a business buys something, gets taxed on it, and then they add a tax on it for the consumer to buy.
Can I interject here?
Yes.
That was passed, I believe, in 2013, although you voted no for that bill?
I actually voted no on the 2013 bill for two reasons. It had the business-to-business taxes in there, and it had a gift tax, only the second, and that's for the people that are trying to pass their estates or their farms or whatever. And they had the high income tax, when I thought there were other ways to do that. I believe in a progressive tax system, but to isolate the high income folks into a fourth tier was a little much.
So approximately half of the surplus went in that direction.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, part of it went into increase the rainy day fund over at the legislature?
Right. I introduced a bill that said we have been running on the same size rainy day fund for about 10, 15 years, and it's time now to increase that, and we did. Not as much as I wanted, but part of it, $150 million, went into increase the rainy day fund. And of course, they did bonding out of that because the Republicans would only agree to an $850 million bonding bill. Of all things, not to put your full weight behind with low interest rates and low costs, when we could have bonded for much more, but they wouldn't go along with it, and it takes 2/3 vote to pass it, so that's where we were stuck with. So we put $200 million in cash into the bonding bill.
Doesn't sound like you squandered that to me.
No, I don't think so.
I was present at the forum conducted by the League of Women Voters here not too long ago,
Yeah.
and I heard you recite 4 matters that are of concern to you. We've covered one was transportation, another was improved education funding.
Yeah.
Is that something that you hope to accomplish over in St. Paul in 2015?
Well, what happened was during the past 10 years, Palenti was borrowing heavily from the schools to balance his budget, which we have to do, the state has to do every year. We had to make that up, $2.5 billion we paid down. We're in a hole to start with, and now we put education in the position of funding early childhood and early childhood scholarships. Funding K-12, we increased it for Edina was about $500 per pupil, and then we also went to the freeze in the public post-secondary schools on tuition. So we covered the whole gamut.
Well, speaking of that forum put on by the League, there was a curious answer by your opponent, Dario Anselmo, to a question concerning a bill which would have brought transparency to independent expenditures, to independent mailings. That is, who's sending those out.
What is your stand on the campaign finance disclosure bill?
They've been sent into your district and other districts around, and they're scurrilous. They try and portray the person that's the recipient of the attention in the worst light. Dario Anselmo didn't seem to have a clue as to what was being discussed or brought up by the League.
I pass on that because I don't think I'm familiar with it. So, but that's
I tried to explain it to him, but...
Yes, well, tell me, I mean, was that an important bill, and what happened?
Well, I really think it's an important bill. People like the Koch brothers and former Senator Norm Coleman.
You mean former Senator and Saudi Arabia lobbyist Norm Coleman?
That's the guy. They are funding through their organizations a lot of irrational and...
How about scurrilous, with that word?
I did use that word, and they took it out of something I wrote, so I didn't know if it was a good word or not.
So, what happened? Did it pass?
No, it didn't pass. There are two segments of the lobbying forces over there at the Capitol that talk their members, the gun lobbyists and the anti-choice people, against that. Apparently, they don't want themselves exposed when they put money into the type of thing that we're trying to give transparency to.
Wow.
And I was really disappointed.
Tell me, Ron, I mean, as you enter this election and having served as a Democrat now, do you still consider yourself to be fiscally conservative and socially moderate?
Oh, there's no question about that. It's kind of been ingrained for years. I'm that way in my personal life and in my financial planning, which I've done for 40 years now.
And I'm not asking you to blow your own horn, but you'll have to answer this question. Who's endorsed you this year?
You know, I really have to read that because I can't remember all.
Well, I'll start reading for you. Conservation Minnesota,
That's right.
Sierra Club, Professional Firefighters, Nurses Association,
They have.
Education Minnesota,
They have too.
Planned Parenthood, NARAL,
Yep.
and the Police and Peace Officers Association. I don't know if I've hit them all.
No, you haven't. I have another half a dozen that that's enough for now. That's
Yeah,
pretty broad spectrum of.
Yeah, it sure is. I do want to talk, Ron, about one thing that I skipped over. That is the Edina War Memorial. That's a big deal. Tell me about your involvement in that, please.
Well, first of all, when I found out about it, I contributed a small amount of money, and I thought they were going to raise $450,000 themselves. But then I realized that they were lagging, and I thought, there's no reason why we can't ask for some bonding money from the state. It's been done in other communities. And I put in a bill for 1/2 of the money that they needed, which was $225,000. And I guarded that. It's a small amount, so I had to watch it. all the
So it
way
doesn't
for
get
2
dropped
years,
along the
so
way?
it wouldn't get dropped. And finally, on the last week, I was tugging on the sleeve of the bonding chair, and she said, "It's all right, we're going to do it."
Nice.
So
nice.
that gave them the extra boost, and they got really rolling then and raised the rest of their $450,000, and they were going to put that in a spot along 50th and Wooddale, in that little park where the brook is babbling by there.
Oh, sure.
Very
Absolutely.
nice, very nice.
More power to you for getting that accomplished, Ron.
Thank you.
Ron, it's been a pleasure that you've dropped in and talked to our viewers, and we hope to see you after you are reelected this fall. Thanks
Okay,
again.
thank you so much.
Joan Howe-Pullis is running a very strong campaign in South Eden Prairie. That's House District 48B and home of uber conservatives Senator David Hahn and House Representative Jennifer Loon. But 48B is trending moderate. Eden Prairie is finding Joan a very good fit for Eden Prairie values. Joan, welcome to Democratic Visions.
Thank you.
Joan, you're a first-time candidate.
Yep.
Why did you decide to run?
I decided to run because I think that we need to have a government that works for everyone. Once I became politically active on issues that were important to me, I was more hopeful and less cynical about how life could be.
Now,
as
I've gone
opposed
on
to
your
keep-
website, Joan. I would think it'd be fair to describe you as a social activist. Can you
Yep.
tell me some of the organizations that you've been involved in and what you've done within those organizations?
In 2012, I became active with Minnesotans United for All Families and Outfront Minnesota.
That was intended to persuade people to vote against the proposed constitutional amendment?
That's correct.
Well, that's great.
Yes.
How did your area vote at the end of the day, do you know?
In southern Eden Prairie, we voted against the constitutional amendment
Tremendous.
60-40.
So did you spend quite a bit of time on that?
Yes.
And then what about 2013? Did you get involved in over at the legislature in some piece of legislation?
I participated in an event over at the state capitol to launch the Vote Yes campaign to bring the marriage equality law. I worked as a volunteer leader, again with Minnesotans United and Outfront Minnesota, knocking on doors, making phone calls, bringing people over to the legislature to meet their representatives.
Were you focusing your activities on people out in this area? Or
Yes.
I see.
It was in district.
You're a mother, is that right? And you're married. I understand you have a master's degree.
I have a master's degree in human development from St. Mary's University of Minnesota. Pax Christi Catholic Community is my church in Eden Prairie, and I've been part of parish leadership for many years. I'm part of music ministry. I'm a cantor for liturgies. I also direct the Bible camp drama team every summer. And I'm also part of faith formation, meaning I help to, lead students in looking at their faith.
Eden Prairie is an incredibly diverse community.
What would you expect to focus your attention on over in St. Paul?
The biggest thing we are up against right now in the country and in the state is to continue to work toward getting people who are unemployed or underemployed fully employed. We've done a really great job in the last couple of years to balance a budget and to begin to have the base under us to have better economic growth. But we're going to have to get creative because it's just a new age. We're going to have to start really listening to all of the different voices in our state to solve this issue.
That would be quite a task to undertake.
Yep.
Do you have any concepts as regards education that you think that should be implemented statewide or out here in Eden Prairie through the auspices of the state?
We absolutely have to make sure that we always keep our commitment to education solid and never like mess around with the funding.
Oh, you mean vote to spend it and then take it back?
Right. On the local level, it's just unworkable if that's not solid. So the state really has to make a commitment to that. But then we also know that the kinds of things that we see as gaps in our education, they're related to our economic issues.
What about transportation? Do you have any views on the light rail system that hopefully will be coming into Eden Prairie?
We need a full complement of public transportation, and our young people really are interested in using rail, but also I'm knocking and talking to an aging population here in Eden Prairie. They are now at a place where they know they're not going to be driving anymore, but they're not ready to give up their independence, their ability to get to and from their lives. Rail and what will happen in terms of our buses and how the Southwest Transit will work in combination with rail is going to be really important for that population as well.
So I assume that you're out and about on the campaign trail on a day in and day out basis?
Yes. Every single day I'm having conversations with people in Eden Prairie, and it's what makes me know that I want to do this job. The biggest theme that I hear is people want the legislature to get things done.
And maybe work on a bipartisan basis?
Yeah. I'm saying to folks, would you tell me what's important to you?
Are they willing to do that?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Great.
What happens at first usually though is they think I'm saying, whose side are you on?
Right.
And then I'll say, well, no, it's okay. Like, you don't need to go there. Let's just talk about what matters to you. Mm-hmm. And then we can have these conversations that are just great.
When you strip away the political baggage, do people sort of share the same desires and wishes going forward?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It's perfect.
Joan, let me cut to the quick.
Sure.
I'm an Eden Prairie voter.
Right.
Why should I vote for you instead of for the person I voted for last time?
I think we need to have people in government that want to work together. The difference between me and my opponent is she has a view of government that says government needs to be smaller. When you have a conversation that says government should be smaller, you run the risk of having a government that only concerns itself with a very narrow set of concerns. We should have a government that is more efficient, that is more effective. And what I want to do is have the conversation be as broad as possible, that every single voter in Eden Prairie, every single citizen in Eden Prairie gets to have a voice and a say in what government will do. The government should be about all of us. And once everyone has a voice in the conversation, then we will be more effective. And that's why you should vote for me, because I will be listening for what matters to everyone.
Democratic Visions is independently crafted by volunteers, mostly Democrats, from Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington.